Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the movie Snake Eyes. And I thought this was kind of like a mediocre movie. It's not horrendously bad, because there are good actors in it, but it's just not really like good, because it follows pretty much a typical kind of boilerplate revenge kind of plot, and towards the end of it doesn't seem to understand what kind of tone it needs to go for. Because at first, it's pretty much kind of serious. And then it starts bringing in more of the G.I. Joe kind of actual elements that need to come into play. And it just kind of gets ridiculous to certain things. It's like, are you going campy? Are you going serious? Now, granted, there are those that can balance those tones out perfectly. And you can have that campy ass cheese right next to your great serious shit going on. This film doesn't really get that. And interestingly enough, the fight scenes in it, which this is an action movie, again, have like the weirdest shit going on. Like the first kind of action bits and like the first third of the movie have like this shaky cam kind of quality and a lot of cuts. Then we kind of get better action scenes kind of like in the middle, because they're kind of forced into kind of closer quarters in certain instances. And then you get to the end ones, and the problem you run into there is that it gets too dark in certain instances. Now, granted, it doesn't go full Game of Thrones where it's like, we're going to use natural lighting, and I can't see shit. But it muddies it enough that you're like, I still don't know what's going on. So, we start off and we see this young kid who we're pretty much like, that's going to be Snake Eyes. And his dad. And they're pretty much hiding out in the woods. And somebody's coming after his dad. It's like, he's probably working for the Joes going against Cobra or whatnot. Spoiler alert. Yeah, that's what it was. And they kind of go to a house. He's like questioning him about, like, I heard you called this was a safe house or something like that. Don't worry about that. Da, 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 da. It's like, shit, we gotta go. Wake up, dude. But he's like, hey, stay here. And then the dude's like, hey, yeah, we're here to get your ass. And then they go, and he's like, yeah, I'll have you, like, do this kind of, dice thing. And, you live or whatnot. It goes to Snake Eyes, and it's like, oh, so that's, how he gets his name. And I don't mind that. Again, it's just in the execution. It's like, oh, alrighty then. Well, he then shoots his dad. He tries to, like, stop him, but he's like, run! And he escapes, but he hears the gunshot and everything. The house is caught on fire, and he's like, We then get to, that was like 20 years ago in Washington. We then get to present day, and we see that he is fighting in like a cage match, underground shit going on, which it's a kind of interesting one, because he uses all these kind of like chains and all that, but it's still kind of like a weird kind of action scene. It just, it's not the worst one. We get kind of through those later. But this dude named Kenta pops up like, yeah, you fight pretty good. I kind of need your ass. And I can kind of tell you where the dude that killed your father is. Yeah. It's like, alright, fine. I'll do whatever I want. So, 4 weeks later, we're in Los Angeles. He, like, pops up, plays with some kids. These other people are like, hey, fuck off with your ball. And he finds this Tommy dude. He's like, alright, cool. But, Snake Eyes, as he's calling himself, I've seen him in some other stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then the guy that plays Tommy has been in this show, The Warrior, and I'm like, yeah, I don't have a problem with these actors. It's, you know, when I talk about how you can review certain things and you're like, okay, sometimes you see it and you're like, it's content. And sometimes you see it and it's the actor or whatnot delivering the content. Here with these guys, it's definitely, they're good and capable actors. It's the content that doesn't really work well with them. They don't get kind of the worst of it. The worst of it kind of goes on to other characters, and you're just like, woof. But we go in and we see that he is called Fish Boy for a reason, because he opens up fish and he puts guns in them. It's like, okay. I mean, the boss has called him, and they go in and he's like, Kenta's like, there's a traitor out of us. Mike, my family member Tommy. So now we're gonna test loyalty. So he gives a gun to Snake Eyes. He's like, kill him. He's like, no, because I saw it in his eyes. He's got honor and shit. He's like, all right, cool. So then we get kind of like a giant fight scene where him and Tommy kind of like fight through it and everything. They kind of like get each other out. He tried to get him out on the boat because evidently Snake Eyes and Kenta are still kind of working together. He's pretty much tried to get him to infiltrate Tommy's organization, the Arashikage, which are an ancient ninja kind of order and shit, because they've got a magical MacGuffin jewel that is evidently a nuclear jewel that was bestowed upon them by the Sun God. Now, there are interesting Japanese mythology things that you could really delve into and be like, okay, is this an actual magical thing? What is this? We don't really get that. It's just a magic stone that does whatever the plot fucking demands. Like, the last bit of this deals with that thing, and it's just like, what? Because we had pretty much straightforward revenge story, pretty much gonna be figuring out would Snake Eyes betray Tommy or not, and then, poof, MacGuffin. What? That some dude can use, even though we have no idea how this fucking thing works. Blast somebody off, kind of like the Tesseract Energy in Captain America First Avenger? Yeah. Make some kind of shield out of nowhere because it can fucking do it because the plot demands it? Yeah. Don't worry. That gets fucking annoying. So, he pretty much saves Tommy's life. He's like, yeah. He's kind of injured, passes out. He's like, yeah, I'm taking you home. And he then vouches for him and says, hey, I kind of want him to join us in the Arashikage. It's like, oh, okay. Because you can see the parallels that this is Snake Eyes and that Tommy is going to be Storm Shadow. And you're just like, how the fuck does this kind of work out? Don't worry, the answer comes, and it's fucking stupid. So he then is trained and has to go through like 3 trials to join the organization. So, first trial, he kind of gets set on. He's got to take this bowl of water from this dude without spilling a drop. First, he tries to do it by force, but then he figures it out. He's got like 4 attempts. If he fails the 4, he gets out. And the thing is, the grandmother is like the head of the clan, who I really don't have a problem with her, though granted, she kicks some kinds of ass that is like, what? Now, granted, I don't mind an old lady kicking ass. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen shit in Dragon Ball and anime that's like fucking nuts ass shit. I ain't got a problem with that. It's just like, alright, she could have been just used better. Well, granted, she doesn't get the shit of shit stuff that's going on. And he's like, wait a minute, I figured it out. So he's like, hey, want to trade? And they trade the bowls, and he has passed the test. Yay. So like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, alright. And then the other master, see, this was done by the this first master that he had to like get through this challenge for is played by the dude that was in the raid. That dude, I'm like, yeah, alright, cool. He gets some chance to kick some ass and stuff like that, which I appreciate. And then the other master is this blind master dude, Akiko, pretty much the one that's close with Tommy, who's like the head of security. He's like, yeah, he can tell a liar no matter what. It's like, alright, cool. So Tommy then goes out. We see that he's secretly working with Kenta to get this fucking jewel so that way he can get his revenge. It's like, right? And I can understand revenge to a certain extent, but it's like they do too many kind of boilerplate revenge ones, and you need to kind of like show how this is eating at him or how he really needs it. Because at this point, I don't really even see why I'd be like, I don't know. I had a weird view of where like I can't really empathize with Snake Eyes to an extent because, granted, I'm like, all right, your dad was murdered by these dudes, and you want to stop these dudes, and I get that. And I was like, all right, you got this dude that can give you like, you can become a fucking ninja. Now, granted, I'm different than him. I understand I'm not the character. It's just I don't have that connection of like, all right, you're going through a lot of trouble to get something that's kind of fucking weird and MacGuffin-y to where it's like, okay, this dude supposedly has been feeding you information that would get you to your father's killer. I would rather pretty much become a ninja and use this giant fucking organization that's supposedly fighting evil and fucking use that to kind of go after the dude. You know? Like, it's where you're looking at a dude and you're like, okay, you're putting 2 and 2 together and you're kind of getting 5 here, man. Like, I don't know. It's what I'm presented with the opportunity to like go after revenge with this stupid, silly kind of Trojan horse plot, or become a fucking ninja. which granted would require some work and everything, but then you're a fucking ninja. I'm weird that way. I'd be like, ninja? I mean, granted, he becomes a ninja at the end, but still. And he's, of course, fighting with that and everything. He, of course, goes through the second test, and for some reason kind of passes, though he's like, it's kind of like the cave in Star Wars that Luke goes into on Dagobah, kind of dealing with, like, his whole stuff. His father would just be like, I'm glad you survived. Pretty much let that shit go. It's like, alright, cool, whatever. And I'm just like, I thought there'd be kind of more with that. And of course, Storm Shadow, Tommy, and Akiko are able to kind of like figure out what's going on. They try and go after Kenta. We get a back alley kind of brawl that works out, and we find out that they're running guns and shit. And we see that, of course, it's Cobra. It's like, shit, Snake Eyes is with Cobra. Kind of, not really. He's like, Cobra, what the fuck? And of course, we get the other twist that the dude at the beginning was Cobra. It's like, alright, fine, whatever. And we see that Kenta, and then Baroness pops up because she wants the jewel. And that's kind of what Kenta wants to control the Arashikage, and Cobra wants the jewel. And this Baroness, oh my god, like, the accent fucking, what? Takes you out of it, one. And just the lines that she gives to kind of deliver, like, I don't take her seriously as a threat. I don't take her seriously at all. It's like, oh god, it's content being not good and acting not being good. And it's like, I don't know if it's just their acting ability or how they were directed. Because that's also another kind of thing you got to take into consideration. Alright, fine. We also see that Scarlet from the G.I. Joes pops up. And her first introduction works well. But then they kind of take her into the last act, and it's just like, like, what are you doing with her? She just says the weirdest shit with, like, it doesn't sell it whatsoever. Scarlet and the Baroness are the weakest characters in here with the kind of worst acting, in my opinion. I'm like, oh, God. Their content's not good. Their delivery's not good. And I'm just like, oh, God, please let it be over. Please let it be over. So, he then goes to his third trial, which, bear with me. Granted, we've got a magic fucking rock that's about to pop up. But, and he's scoping the place to kind of get it. You got its DNA lock. Of course, Tommy gives him this sword, Morning Light, to cement their friendship and everything, and be like DNA and shit like that. Ooh, blood brothers. Ooh, because he needs that DNA for later. Ooh. But his last trial is to see if giant anacondas don't eat him. And I'm just like, you're like a centuries-old organization. How the fuck would you get anacondas here? Indigenous ones, anyway. Like, granted, if you're going mythological route and they're like mythical anacondas that are mystical and supernatural and can, like, tell a person's heart and shit like that, I need that to be explained. Not full force, but, like, these are magical. They do say they're sacred anacondas, but I'm like, I would have just rather they had gone, like, deep mythology, man, and just be like, sacred sea serpents or sacred dragons or sacred shit like that. I understand he's Snake Eyes and you're trying to build the whole thing with snakes, but you don't literally need to fucking do that. Now, granted, that could be in the G.I. Joe lore. I am not that well versed into it, but I, like, alright, and they, of course, sense his shit for revenge, but Akiko's like, I will not let them kill you. He's like, fine. I'll throw him a symphatic, but then he's like, fuck you, people. And then he, like, goes and he's able to steal the rock, and he presents it to Kenta. He's like, yeah, and he fucking just says, like, hey, henchman number 1, red shirt fuckboy, and a blast. And he's like, yeah, I can use this, yeah. I'm gonna use this to take over the Arashikage. He's like, hey, there's your payment back there, man. So he goes there. He's like, and we find out that the dices were loaded. And to always come up Snake Eyes, he's like, yeah, I did it because of Cobra. It's like, Cobra, fuck Cobra. And he finally like, fuck the revenge because, of course, there's a bigger kind of threat that you pretty much gave a fucking rock that can, like, obliterate people with to a terrorist organization that does stupid, horrible, bad shit. The biggest kind of problem is they don't really treat Snake as a good character. What they do is Snake, because the plot demands it, has to keep his revenge thing going. You don't... I think the biggest issue I have with Snake Eyes' whole thing, is that I don't feel like he's a character. He's a plot object that moves along in the plot's route of here he needs to keep the revenge up until he gets to this point where he gets this information. It's like, oh, the plot now demands that I do not go for this revenge and do that. Because I don't feel his anger or his resentment or anything like that. It doesn't pop up enough to cement that of why he would want that revenge. We just see that as a kid, he's like, my dad's dead. And that's about the extent that we get it to where we don't see any kind of like little ritual that he's looking at something that his dad gave him, or that he is going through some kind of motion to target or like shadow box, like he's taking the dude down. There's a lot of other kind of ways to showcase why he wants that revenge. Otherwise, you're like, you could just kind of let that shit go and fucking become a ninja. And then you could potentially track down that bad guy, stop him from ever doing bad guy stuff again, and then continue doing that to stop other bad guys. I'm like, Now, granted, that's kind of my thought process. But the thing is, you're trying to sell this to me and connect me with this character, and you don't really do that. So, we then get into the last third, where we pretty much have Magical MacGuffin Man, Kenta, just being like, yeah, here's my glowing rock, I'ma blast you motherfuckers. And, of course, he pretty much goes through, is like, hey, bitch, I could've killed my family dude, become the fucking leader here, you old granny bitch. But because the plot demands it, he doesn't blast her away right away. Instead, like, hey, burn this bitch, I'm gonna keep this rock. She's like, shit, well, guess what, I'm temporary truce. So she's working with the Scarlet chick for a little bit, and grandma, and they start having their kind of fight scenes going around, kind of like fucking around with shit. And they're able to kind of like do that kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy kind of shot where we got like Tommy, Snake Eyes, Akiko, and everything. Because there's also this fucking stupid set piece action scene that made no fucking sense, where Tommy and Akiko were pretty much going after Snake to kind of like rack his ass. And he's like, oh, I'm now on your side, blah, 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 because we gotta have twists and turns and shit. Because that's what the plot demands. And they're like, hey, he's fighting them. And then Tommy kind of helps his ass out. They kind of like go through this. They get into a car, and for some reason are able to get an Uzi. It didn't really show that a lot of people were like trying to kill Snake with an Uzi on that kind of like truck, like car carrying vehicle. But whatever the fuck you want to do, go for it, man. It's your weird ass action movie. But let's go back to the ending part, and they're able to kind of like sack him off. But the thing is, Tommy gets the glowing rock of fuckery and tries to blast the dude. But then the grandma's like, you should have done that. I'm like, And evidently we learned that they have vowed, now granted, we had heard inklings before when it was like explaining, like, we don't use this thing. It's like, I don't know if this penalty should have been this severe, because honestly, he should have just been able to fucking rack his ass and I got bazooed. Like, I'm gonna fucking take your ass out. But Kenta pretty much runs away. Snake chases him to the snake pit and racks his ass in there. Kenta kills one of the giant fucking anacondas, but then another one fucking eats his ass. And the anacondas are like, hey, Snake, you cool. And then they just leave his ass. Like, the big snake kind of chops on the chain because he had a chain wrapped around Kenta, and the one ate him. I was like, yeah, there's 3 snakes. Now there's 2, and that's it. So they're pretty much taking stock. Granny's like, Tommy, you used the stone. You can never leave this clan. Tommy's like, I've done a lot of fucking shit for this clan, so eat my ass. Puts his ring down and be like, fuck off. Walks away. Snake gets his shit. Yeah, Tommy also said that if he ever saw Snake again, he was going to kill him. And the thing is, there is usually that kind of intense rivalry between Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, but this doesn't really sell it whatsoever. I'm like, we haven't really seen you do a lot for this clan. Now, granted, the grandmother is the one pretty much in charge and running shit, but he hasn't really done much. It's like, alright, fine, whatever. So Snake gets his gear. Scarlet pretty much proves that, hey, your father was a G.I. Joe. We're sorry about that. And then he's like, yeah, she's like, hey, he's got big shoes to fill. Maybe you could fill him one. He's like, yeah, maybe, but I'm going to go try and save Tommy first. and then he's in the outfit and everything, and he flies off on a motorcycle. And we see in a mid-credit scene that the Baroness pops up on Tommy's plane. He's like, "Hey, you want to work for Cobra?" It's like, yeah, sure, but I'm not gonna like serve any master and call me Storm Shadow. And I'm just like, it's how you execute these things. Like, there's a difference between being like, oh, that's Snake Eyes, oh, that's Han Solo, and seeing Tony Stark and Iron Man at the end go, I am Iron Man. There is a vast difference between those. These are just like, you can almost see the people who write them and direct be like, see, we said the thing. And it's like, alright. Like, you don't get the same kind of power and effect that you see, like, in the fan service moment of, like, Captain America in Endgame having Mjolnir going, Avengers, assemble. And people can, like, point and be like, hey, yeah, he said the thing. But it's executed well, and it's had the build-up to, like, this is all the Avengers going after Thanos. Here, you're like, alright, I'm going to tell you what my name is, because this is my name. And we've kind of known that over the course of this 2-hour movie. This movie's length is also like, okay, I'm not saying that 2-hour movies are bad. I'm not saying if you go over a certain limit, it's bad. Because I've been entertained with, like, Endgame, Infinity War, the extended editions of Lord of the Rings. If a lengthy time for a movie's runtime is warranted, I have no beef with that. But when you get into pretty much parts where you're like, there's dead spaces, you're just doing shit in an executed way that just doesn't really work, that time frame seems so much longer, and you're like, I kind of want that time back. No, I don't really hate this movie, but I don't understand, like, how they keep messing up with this G.I. Joe franchise. Now, the thing is, you need to know when to take something seriously in the G.I. Joe franchise and when to camp that fucking shit up. Kind of similar to He-Man, which is why He-Man is notoriously hard to fucking try and hit for. I say that because I've got movie channels, and the fucking fucking Ivan Drago, Dolph Lundgren version keeps popping up. God damn, fucking weird ass motherfucker. It's like they saw Flash Gordon and tried to copy that, but you gotta know how you're doing it. It's just, but also that's comparable because of toys and 80s franchises. You would think that G.I. Joe would. I understand why it's hard to adapt for, but why I'm seeing kind of at least not complete whiffs, but like them like weird bass hits that are going on. It's like, what the fuck are you doing here, guys? I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on with the G.I. Joe franchise going forward with this. It's just like, okay. That was a thing I saw. Now, would I recommend it to you as a G.I. Joe fan? Not really, because it doesn't really turn into a G.I. Joe movie until the end, and not a really good G.I. Joe movie, because it's just more loosely connected than anything. If you're an action movie fan and you have bumfuck nothing to do, sure, there's worse out there. But you deserve better. And if you enjoyed this, of course, I don't want to take that enjoyment away from you. I'm happy for you. Please continue to enjoy it. But here, I was just like, could have done so much better. So those are my opinions on the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.